Great Stambino, got to get Danhausen on in the future. Oh, this Danhausen? This Danhausen, that's who you're referring to? Who's got about 12 more of these now because he's a money-making machine? I would love to talk to my friend Danhausen. Should I show you guys a fun picture from when I was in WWE and went to go see Danhausen in Connecticut? I'll find that picture very quickly because I like to take in all wrestling. There is a company called Best Trivia Ever, and if you're in the Northeast, you may know about them. I know like Bischoff and Mick Foley and a couple other people have done some appearances for them, and they actually ran a wrestling show at a brewery, which was a fantastic idea. It was a brewery, Danbury, Milford, Connecticut. I can't remember what it was called. Great place, great spot to watch wrestling, a ton of fun. And Danhausen was on the show, and I had gone back and forth with him. I will tell you, I wanted Danhausen to come work and do things with me in WWE. I had an entire pitch. I love this. I love that I'm going to go off on a tangent already. I wanted Danhausen, and he was under contract at the time, and it never went anywhere, so I wasn't tampering or anything like that. But he was under contract. I think he was doing ROH stuff, or whatever it might have been. As I continue to look for this picture, I apologize for the delay. I found it. This was September 2021. There's me and Danhausen. There's my ring light, but yes, there's me and Danhausen in Connecticut, somewhere in Connecticut. And Danhausen was doing an indie show. It was fantastic. I enjoyed it very much. I think Janela was on that show. He might have been on that, or he was on the one the next year. But I liked being able to go watch those things and keeping up on things. And I talked to Danhausen, and I reached out to him after he did the interview with Conan, which was awesome. And I think a lot of people saw that and went, oh, this guy's a big deal, as he should be, and very funny. And I thought he could bring a lot to the table. And I had this pitch to do a fashion show. It never went anywhere because we couldn't get him. But I wanted to do a fashion show with Danhausen, Kayla, Dalton Castle, and RJ City as the judges judging like wrestling gear. It might have been a one-off. I don't know what it would have been. And believe me, no one that never got to. I don't even think I talked about it with RJ. I might have. It never got to Dalton because I didn't know where his contract was. But I knew with like ROH, it was, a pandemic and all that stuff going on, and were they closing down or what was going on? And obviously Tony bought him, and it lives on in a different world now. But I had that idea to do some kind of fashion one-off show of judging wrestling gear with Danhausen, with Kayla, with Dalton Castle, and RJ. Admittedly, a real pie-in-the-sky idea. I'd revisit it if we got the right combination of people. I think that would be fun to do, but I would love to have Danhausen on this show, and I know he's been back and active on the indie scene lately. I don't know what his status is in AEW, but that guy is a money-making machine. He is funny as hell, and he is someone who absolutely took advantage. I don't want to say take advantage. That's the wrong way to put it. Someone who was able to make the most of not being able to do a lot of wrestling during the pandemic. He took great skill, made great strides in the world of getting yourself over via your own social media, via your own YouTube channel, much like Cardona does, much like so many people do now. But when he couldn't go out and wrestle, and there wasn't that many wrestling matches to be had on the indie scene, this is before he was really, big, and had the ROH stuff and all that, Danhausen showed, listen, we entertain for a living. Here's how I'll do that. I loved watching his unboxing videos. Here's a fun story. And something happened, so he had to cut it out, and I made the call on that. I sent Danhausen a bump sweatshirt once. He was kind of like right in between he wasn't signed anywhere at the time, and I couldn't tell if it would get him in trouble. They ended up cutting it out, but I think he showed it, but he didn't say my name. What a fun, lively chat we have going on right now. But I would love to talk to Danhausen. Earl or Brian Hebner. Brian allowed me to come on his show, Reffing It Up with Jimmy Corderas. I'm a fan of Brian. I have been friends with Brian and Earl since I attended my first TNA show. I was allowed to go backstage. I had some mutual friends of theirs and set me up with them. And I went to a TNA house show in like Central Jersey. It was Hazlet or one of those records. One at Rahway, where I think like WrestlePro ran or something like that. And I met Brian and I met Earl, and Earl was cursing up a storm about something he couldn't sell his T-shirts. And I remember that's when I connected. As some of you have figured out, I am friendly with Jeff Jarrett. And Jeff and I talked that day. And Jeff Jarrett, wow, now this is like my intro to like wrestling kind of in terms of getting in the business. But Jeff Jarrett and I hit it off about fantasy football because that's what I was doing. And he came on my fantasy show for Sirius. And then we hit it off. And Jeff played old school heel Jeff Jarrett and ripped me a new one on the air, and I ate it and played the straight guy, the straight broadcaster, and I had a blast with Jeff, and we've been friends ever since then. He loves fantasy football. He will also tell you any time he tells you of how he's done in fantasy football, say, well, I've won 8 out of the last 6 years championships, because Jeff's good at hyperbole and making sure he's great. Some would say greater than great. That's up to you. But anyway, shout out to the chat here. Matthew, Great Stambino. Connor, what's up, Connor? Hello. Wow, what an honor. Captain Wiener, as always. Ian, would like to see Dan Reichert on as a guest. I would love to have Dan Reichert on this program. He's been in the chat before. Dan Reichert is one of my favorite human beings in the entire world. He is one of the funniest. He's got one of the most brilliant minds. You want to talk about somebody who figured out how to use Twitch? Go watch Dan Reichert's Twitch. It is, if you like, and I'll date myself a little bit, if you like old school David Letterman, I'm talking pre-CBS, when he was in the Conan spot. Well, Conan was in the Dave spot. Just the wacky, off-the-wall, that is Dan Reichert's brain. And does a great job at Giant Bomb. He had our good friend Chef Reactions on Giant Bomb recently. He had Adam Cole and Evil Uno on Giant Bomb recently. But I would love to have Dan on here because actually, I guess people may or might not know this, him and I worked together for a handful of years at WWE. He was the lead producer, whatever title he had, of podcasts. And got to work with Woods and has a lot of friends through the wrestling world and has before, during, and after his time in WWE. I know what we can do. I just thought of here's another reason to get us to 1,000 subscribers at thewrestlingmatchshow.com. Dan and I will bring back, if we can do this, and I'm saying this without conferring with him, but I know he'll do it, a concept that had 1 or 2 pilots at WWE and never got off the ground because an old regime completely bungled the Twitch deal at the time. I know it's different now. But Dan, I'll tell you what it is. We had a show called The War Room. I will 100% do this show on this channel if we get to 1,000 subscribers or more. And I will be able to get guests on to do this. We had a show called The War Room where we did a 4 to 5 round draft. This is different than the drafting I talked about. And we did it based on a subject. So the main one we did was European champions. So there was 4 or 5 of us in the draft. I think it was like me, Dan was involved, Stokely, might have been Tegan. I know we tried to get Candace, but it was wrestlers who were big wrestling fans and had that kind of knowledge, the nerd knowledge like we did. And we would do like a 4 or 5 round draft. And what we would do is whoever at the end had the best roster based on you guys in the chat. It was a Twitch type of chat thing. And we had all employees in there. It was never broadcast. It was never went anywhere. But we would say, okay, based on, I took Regal and I traded for D'Lo Brown. We could have trades. And there was, if you had the worst draft based on the chat vote, you had to do some kind of punishment. We were going to stretch that out over a whole season. So I would love to do the War Room here and get some other personalities involved in that. Do, 4 of us, 5 round draft, something like that. And you guys vote in the chat. So once again, if you want to see other content other than the Wrestling Mat, Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern, please subscribe at thewrestlingmatchshow.com. It's right here. Hit that like button on anything you see. I appreciate that. By the way, if you've been leaving comments, guess who's been responding to every comment other than Hannibal, because fuck him. Me. I've been responding to them, and I will continue to respond to them going forward because I appreciate that you guys are taking the time to leave comments. I love to go back and forth.